Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
Hey, welcome to Justice Serve TV. Don't mind me having a Cliff Bar. You know, they are so nasty looking, but they're pretty good. Linda,
That's because we've been busy all day working, keeping up with what's going on out there in the world. Michael Bryant.
I mean, there's so much happening between Kohberger and Mr. Combs. Where do we begin?
Well, let's start. Why don't we start with Mr. Combs first, okay?
All right.
Because that's right around the corner here in New York City. And there was the jury said they had a verdict on counts 2 through 5, but they were hung on 1. And so there's been a lot of discussion in the afternoon. Boy, it's really nice to see how a great judge runs a courtroom, Michael Bryant. About whether or not to take a partial verdict, not to take a partial verdict, getting both sides' opinion, getting inputs from both sides, and then at the end deciding to go along with what the defense things, not to tell them they could deliberate tomorrow and may have to come back Thursday, not to give them an Allen charge. But finally, the judge told them about 42 minutes ago that he received their note that they reached a verdict, which the note was like a couple hours ago. They reached a verdict in counts 2 through 5, and he asked them just to continue deliberating. And he says, discuss and weigh your respective opinions dispassionately and follow my instructions on the law. I ask you to return to the jury room. If you decide you are done for the day, send me another note and I'll bring you back out to end the day. Okay. And the jurors then sent a note about 38 minutes ago saying they were done for the day and they'll resume tomorrow. So they brought them back out into the jury room as the defense, into the courtroom as the defense asked. Tomorrow they'll go right to the jury room. They'll continue deliberating. And only if they send another hung note out tomorrow will the judge give them some type of Allen charge, whether it be a modified one or the full one, and then tell them they may have to come back Thursday. So they're going to wait and see. So this is how, boy, it is, but it's refreshing to see how a judge gets all inputs, weighs words, weighs opinions, weighs what they can do. And remember, this is where we started yesterday with the jury saying that there was one juror not deliberating, and then they had
after 2 hours, one juror, right. Number 25, that bad person, was not following the court's instructions. So
and then they had a note, right?
Follow our instructions.
Right, and then they had a note of 4:15 and yesterday, and then they had a note this morning. By the time they gave decided what the answer on the testimony from yesterday, they had a note of 10:15, and that basically said is both if one side takes drugs or one side accepts drugs, are they both and they both sharing drugs? Are they both guilty of drug dealing? Okay, an interesting question.
Look at the verdict form. Okay.
Yeah, but it's a good question, right? There's not lawyers in there. And then he sent them back in, and then we had the note about the hung jury and that they had a verdict. It was clear they were going through counts 2 through 5 because they also had a question on those counts. On one, I forget which one it was. So and those have to do with Cassie. Really, those are Cassie counts.
Yeah, well, I want to look at that just to refresh people's recollection about the actual form. It's not the slip. It's the verdict form. Actually, they call it a verdict sheet, I think. But anyway,
it's a verdict sheet. I have it.
What do you think about? Yeah, I'm going to bring it up here. What do you think about this request by the prosecution not to allow the court to accept a split or a partial verdict?
Well, I don't think you could do it. I don't think you can do it yet. I mean, I think once they really say,
if they are hung on number 1 and that's it, we're done, can't do it.
Then of course you accept the partial verdict. I mean, unlike Massachusetts, right?
I just think if you give them that message now, that go back, continue to deliberate on the charge you are not yet to a verdict on. We are not going to accept the partial verdicts on those you have already decided. I think the message is bad. I think the message is that it's all or nothing. It's all or nothing.
Or you can go home. Or you go home.
Yeah. So I think that's a bad message to give. We'll see if they get to that. So let's take a look at the verdict form sheet slip, just so we can kind of refresh folks' recollection.
This is federal court. This is not Massachusetts.
No, don't give me no sheet. Don't give me no sheet there, partner. Okay, so here you have the basic count one.
Look at this.
This is the one they're hung up on.
How do you find the defendant? And you know how not guilty comes first, then guilty.
That's
and
probably.
then if and only if, underlined,
Hmm.
you find the defendant guilty of count one, which types of racketeering acts do you unanimously find were involved in the offense? And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
I think there's
6,
another one on the
7,
second
8.
page.
8. Right, there's 8.
Yeah. So here's a question for you, because we know there have to be 2 predicate acts, right? Under
Right,
RICO, but they don't tell the jury that.
right,
So
So
the
they-
jury may
right.
find one, and they may say guilty, right?
right.
But only find one predicate act. Well, then that's not guilty under RICO.
I thought they told them that there has to be 2 acts. I thought
Okay,
they told
I'm
them.
looking for the form. The form itself, I don't see
Doesn't
that.
say it, but I think it's in the jury charge.
Okay, well, that's a mistake then.
Yeah,
They should have that on the sheet
Yeah.
as well.
And then it says, if and only if you find the defendant guilty of count 1. Okay, so this is the interesting, right? Did
Yeah, let
the
me bring that one
pattern?
up.
This is kind of interesting. Did the pattern of racketeering activity include sex trafficking of Cassie? And if you only find the defendant guilty of count 1, the pattern of racketeering includes sex trafficking of Jane. So that's all in count 1. So, but you notice how it's underlined. Notice how it's clearly defined for the jury. If and only if you find,
Crazy,
right?
crazy idea.
Oh my goodness gracious! What a novel idea that the jury sheet should be clear. All
Okay,
right.
so let me manipulate this a little bit as bigly as I can. So there you see the balance of the predicate acts, and then the if and only if that you reference.
And then we go to count 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2, 3.
Yeah, and those are resolved. I think there's going to be a guilty on the final count. Just my thought, because the Mann Act seems to be a slam dunk, because it doesn't require a victim. The way it's written just requires that a person was moved across state lines for an illegal purpose.
So, I mean, quite frankly, in this day and age, if people want to consent to having sex for money, where are we?
Yeah, I know, victimless crime and all of that. So that's why my belief that the Mann Act, MANN, as it says here on the sheet, is irrelevant here, because you don't have a victim. But
Yeah, but these are pretty serious. People think it's the racketeering that could say no. It's these.
well, yeah,
counts
let's
that could say
talk about penalties for what I think will be the one likely conviction, and it's a max 10 for a Mann Act violation, maximum 10 years. I don't know what the federal guidelines are. I'm guessing with no priors, it's probably 3 or 4 years, be my guess, something like that. But that's
I don't know.
clearly the least punishing of those that are hanging out there.
Well, I tell you what, it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow. But yes, this is the forms. These are the forms we have. And remember, there's also counts. They said they were also had a verdict on counts 4 and 5. So they went through.
I'm gonna move
It's
on to
interesting.
that one.
They went through this. They went through the verdict form in order, right? They went through it in order.
Yeah, and it sounds like like normal folks. If you're going through a test, right? You're always told, if you get stuck on something, just move on, and then circle back. And it sounds like that's exactly what they've done.
Well,
let me
Okay,
tell you a tip here. The test taking tip, right? This is a little bit as an aside. If you're taking a test, especially a timed test, and you come on one that you get stuck on, you just say "kiss my ass" and move on. And then if you have time to come back to it, great. But don't get so hung up on the first one that you eat up all your time that remains. So it's kind of.
I would say like have an ice cream cone or something. You've been hanging spicy Michael. Whoa, spicy Michael.
This was what we learned when we were studying for the MBE, which is part of the law exam. 200 questions in a 3-hour chunk. So you have 1.47 minutes per question, and you could see like a fact pattern like this, and you're like, oh my God. And so my professor said, that's when you just look at it and say, kiss my ass, and you move on. So
I don't think he's going to say that these days in class, but that's.
I don't know. I have a feeling he would.
That's just me. But so apparently the reports from the courtroom are that Combs is not looking very happy. But the defense may be thinking, well, maybe they are happy. Maybe they're going to find when they quickly dispatched of Cassandra. And they're involved, they're hung on the other one. So we're going to find out tomorrow. That's number one. That's case 1. And then
I'm behind on my verdict sheet. So let's finish up here. Here's 4 and 5.
Sorry for you.
We were just talking about. So I think 4 is a tricky one, but we'll see. They've got it figured out. They've got a verdict one way or the other.
Right.
So
Right.
only the RICO Act, which is the one from the beginning, I think most people thought was weak, and the jury's clearly struggling with it.
But look at this. Look at this. Think about this. If you find the pattern of racketeering act includes sex trafficking of Cassandra, if and only find each defendant guilty count when the pattern of racketeering includes sex trafficking of Jane. Now, sex trafficking of Cassandra is one of count 2, right? So if you find him guilty on count 2, then he has to have one of the predicate acts on count 1.
Yeah. So some of the predicate acts are part of standalone charges outside of the first count.
That's the sex trafficking of Cassandra. But if you're going to find him guilty of that, you're going to find him guilty of this. So this is when I read it this way, it's interesting. I think, well, we're going to find out either tomorrow or Thursday, aren't we? Aren't we?
I'm betting on tomorrow. They've honed it down to this one item, which does have some interesting components, and they've already had some time to work on it. So I think they sleep on it. They come back in. They see if they can wrestle whomever is not in the majority to switch sides, or they're going to say, nope, we're hung, and they'll get the dynamite charge. I think by the end of the day, we got something.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, those of us who are going to be around are going to be our new members. Teresa Resendez, thank you very much. Shari D, new member, thank you very much. Shari D, member for 3 months. Yes. Wow. Joey Kane gifted 1 Justice Served TV membership. Joey Kane gifted another Justice Served TV membership.
That's Joey Kane.
Thank you so much, Joey. You're terrific. But before we bring our guests on, we have something else that's happening.
Wait a minute.
Along the way.
I'm trying to tag team on your post there, because this is the best way I've got to do this. Christina Caro, thank you for using your channel and voices for good. There it is right there.
Oh, okay? Thank you very much.
And I know this is confusing where it has that refund button underneath the donation. I've never hit that button. I never refunded. And Kitty Cat, fantastic host and guests.
Thank you, Kitty Cat.
Thank
you.
And you see it's a weird number because Venmo takes their pound of flesh. That's why it's kind of
everybody takes their pound of flesh.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Now you want to move on to the next breaking news story.
Yeah, and by the way, we have a great show. By the way, Olivia is waiting in the wings. But the breaking news stories will be on tomorrow. I think we decided about 12:50 tomorrow. By then we should have
the hearing is at 1 our time, which is going to have that horrible court Zoom.
I got confused. I took down our post. We put it back up. With the thumbnail, and that's because Bryant Kohberger is pleading guilty of slaughtering, let's see, my words, massacring, my word, butchering, my word, 4 innocent, beautiful college kids. He avoids the death penalty. I suggest that his lawyer did what she had to do. She saved his life.
Yep, no doubt. And I think when you go into that case, that's the goal. When you heard about the DNA, you heard about the surveillance video, you heard about too many coincidences about where he was, when and where, and when this happened. His fleeing, all of those things. To me, it was never a guilt case. It was always a death case.
And there's 2 family members who are for it because they want to get this over with. They want to put him in prison. Where, by the way, he could end up like, I won't say it too loud, but he could end up like Jeffrey Dahmer, Whitey Bulger, all those people. It happens. He will be a target in prison. No one's going to shed any tears. And 2 families are dead set against it. I do think we'll talk a little bit tomorrow about it, about whether or not, they want their questions answered. They didn't want this, but 2 families did. And, we can talk more about it tomorrow. But that we're going to be on the air for that. Are you not expecting us 12:45 in your afternoon? I think we're going to cover it. I think that'll be our show for the day. We'll end up doing that show and talking about it afterwards. That's my view, right, Michael?
Yep. The hearing itself, because remember what it is officially, it's a change of plea hearing. That's not likely to take all that long.
And he's not going to give a factual basis. The prosecution,
he doesn't have to allocute.
No, apparently the prosecution is, in New Jersey, he'd have to give a factual. He'd himself have to give a factual basis, but the prosecution is, and so we may not hear him at all tomorrow. He may be there. We may not hear him at all.
And that leads to the dissatisfaction of those who were not just family members, but others that felt that this needed to be exposed. This needed to be aired, and everybody needed to know and hear him either be convicted based on other witness testimony or to hear the words out of his own mouth. admitting what he did. Don't necessarily have to do that in Idaho.
By the way, Scott McGinnis is here. Scott, thank you very much. Michael's true boots on the ground. And he will be again Monday when he comes up for Aidan Carney's hearing in Canton. He's a great journalist, and Linda in studio makes a great team here. Thank you very much, Scott, for those.
Scott's a good one. Where were you, Scott, the other night? We had our Frida Palooza.
Shy.
He was hiding in the.
He was shy. He was shy. He'd rather do this.
I'll find you on Monday.
And Brooklyn member for 4 months, maybe for 6 months. I'm sorry, for the fantastic JST.
I haven't even been a member for 6 months. I gotta.
Oh, what am I gonna do with him? What am I gonna do with him, Brooklyn? I don't know. Vincent McCormick, new member. Thank you. Welcome. I think you'll find this a very welcoming community here. If you haven't, please go back and watch Michael Easter's show from last night, where he dissected and taught a lot about the testimony of the people in Karen Reed. And please go back and watch my rant against one former FBI agent who trades in the word FBI in her Twitter account, or X account, I should say. It did get us. And do you have it? Do you have it queued up? We are now baby AIs.
I do not. Does Missy have that? I don't
Missy, are you able to get our baby AIs?
Missy, I see the panic. I see panic.
No, don't panic. Don't panic. We have Olivia on, and I'm sure she won't mind seeing our baby eyes when we're talking about it, because we have Olivia on for one specific purpose, but really two. I mean, I know we brought her on to discuss the high points in Karen Reed, her favorite moments, our favorite moments, your favorite moments. But I also want to talk to her about the Sandra Birchmore case, which I promised we would continue to do. I will advise you again, for all of you that are watching, as I have to do all the time, or try to do all the time, that my husband is involved in that case. He is involved being the expert for the civil attorneys. He's the one that broke the case wide open, said this was a homicide. That case, by the way, is stayed at the request of the attorneys for the estate, the civil case, pending the outcome, apparently, of the federal court, which tells me something may be going on besides adding another death penalty lawyer to, quote, save his life. The best way to save somebody's life is to, shall we say, snitch.
Yeah, and it's not unusual for the civil case to trail and to be stayed, and it's very common to try and get the criminal out of the way first for many reasons. Anyway, whether there's something happening behind the door, closed doors, who knows? But Olivia is on with us. You want to chat about Birchmore before we jump into the
no, let's just jump to Karen Reed, and then we'll bring up.
Okay, so here's how this all played out, because first of all, 6 may sound like a random number, but that was purposeful. I just thought, not top 5, not top 10, top 6. As you start to get
Olivia, by the way. Hi,
Olivia. Hi.
Hi. How's everyone doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us. So I threw this out there to Olivia, and then I started looking for stuff, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. There are no really finite 6 moments. So this is a hodgepodge that crosses a lot of different lists, right? Some of them.
I have 13.
I know. Believe me, you can't stop, and some of them, I'm sure there will be discussion like that shouldn't be on the list, or that shouldn't be that high. I get it. There's all kinds of attitudes and opinions about this. I've got some that are dramatic moments, so they made the list, and I've got others that are substantively critical moments that maybe are less dramatic, but they had a major impact on the case. So that's kind of what happened. And so I'm not putting it all on Olivia, because it was kind of an amalgam of what she was doing, what I was doing, what LKB was doing, and it is what it is. I mean, you can't. They're just, I tried to sit back and just kind of let it flow over me, like what things, bam, stuck in my head, as very important or dramatic or funny. And so that was part of the chemistry, part of the bouillabaisse of putting these clips together. So, I think it is what it is. So should we begin?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, and then we'll just chat about each of these clips.
I mean, there definitely were so many moments that were just jaw-dropping or hilarious or absurd that, come to mind immediately. But I agree with you in terms of determining which were most evidentially significant, or, what the jury relied most upon. I mean, that's been interesting to hear from them.
Yeah, and I think even things the jury didn't hear, because we were able to see and hear all of that, were considered. And the only thing I will tell you right now, spoiler alert, I did not put the verdict in there just because, it's kind of a built-in dramatic moment. It would be kind of a lazy way to do it. So let's see who comes up aboard first. One of our favorites. Up in position number 6. Let's listen to this exchange with Officer Kelly Dever. Never say Dever.
Do you recall us telling you that we were looking for the truth about your comments?
I'm going to allow it.
That we were looking for the truth.
Which I gave you, yes.
Did you also say on that phone call something to the effect of, I know you're going to tear me a new one because I'm changing my testimony?
Changing, no. But you're trying to do that.
Did you say, I know you're going to tear me a new one?
That's what you're trying to do, so yes.
Actually, what you said was, you're going to tear me a new asshole, didn't you?
I don't recall that, so that's putting words in my mouth.
I'm not asking you to put words in your mouth. I'm asking you if you remember saying that during that phone call. Oh, I know you're going to tear me a new asshole.
I don't recall.
Okay. But you do remember saying something to the effect of, I know you're going to tear me a new one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so
Have you ever heard of something called the blue wall of silence?
while I enjoyed that, because I've never really heard a lot of back and forth about tearing somebody a new one, I did find that interesting. But there was one moment with her, and I'm kind of audibleizing here, one moment within her moments that I think we will all remember. Let's see.
By the way, you indicated under questioning by Mr. Brennan that you knew what they wanted from me, meaning the defense, what they wanted from me. You remember
Yes.
saying that?
Yes.
You remember on that phone call that we read directly from the exact same report that I just read from? You remember that?
And I told you the same thing then.
That's not
Yes.
my question.
Objection.
Sustained.
My question is, just answer my question, Officer Dever. Did we read to you, were you read the exact same thing that I just read to you on that phone call?
Like you can't remember my name. I don't remember.
I can remember this, Dever.
Okay, so the answer is I don't remember. No
The answer is a little
comments.
more than that, Judge. I think we all.
All right, so no comments, just questions, please.
There's Judge Kenney to the rescue.
Why isn't she going after her, who's in her courtroom, lying like, right, Olivia, tell me.
Lifeguard Bev, as Ed Wallace and Duty Ron like to call her, coming into the rescue. And there's so many points throughout the trial where you had a witness who the defense was cross-examining. I mean, of course, this was their witness, so she was hostile, obviously, to them. But when they're cross-examining some of these Commonwealth witnesses, and they're giving so much attitude on the stand, talking back, and then Bev jumps in and comes to the witness's defense almost. It's like, if a witness is not cooperating, that they need to be told, you need to answer the questions.
And remember, this is a witness that was disrespecting the judge too. In part when she first got introduced, the judge was, hi, and she totally blows her off. And then as they're getting into some of the stickier testimony, the judge has to stop, say, Ms. Dever, please just listen to and answer the question. And she gets, one of these exasperated sighs. Yes. So just a petulant little brat. So the court, if I'm the court, I'm like, okay, why don't you just sink here? I'm not helping you.
I think you called her a snotty ass. Something.
I did call her. I called her a snot. I called her a beep more than once. But yeah. So
by the way, can I just interject something here? I have to do this. Only because I am married. Okay. I did mention my husband, and Brady Starr points out, Linda, your dear, brilliant husband he's never going to let me live this down. Okay. Got a woman out of prison wrongfully convicted of murdering her daughter in my backyard. Love him. I can't go anywhere without this happening. I just
those are great stories.
They'll have to tell me which one it is. Brady, let me know which one it is, and I'll mention it to him. Maybe he can come on and talk about it. All right, I'm just sorry that popped in. How to get there?
It's just another day in the life of Dr. Michael Baden. That's, no big deal, right?
No, but we love, I mean, that's justice, right?
Yeah, that's justice,
That's what
right?
you
Justice
hope.
served.
Yep, that's what you hope. Okay,
So
so
what,
any other thoughts on Ms. Dever before we move on from number 6? Anything come to
one,
mind? She's been called by Michael Easter the worst witness he's ever seen. So somebody's got to be number 1. So
right? I mean, there was a lot of competition for that place in this
that's
trial, that's
true.
for sure.
That's true.
But something I think that kind of went un like not a lot of people discussed about her testimony that I picked up on was when Hank went to cross-examine her. I'm like pretty certain that, he asked, have we ever spoken before today? Have you had any contact with us? And I'm pretty certain that she said no. And so basically it was established that they hadn't spoken before today, they hadn't prepped. But I did not get that from the testimony, because when he's questioning her, I mean, notice how much quicker she answers Hank Brennan's questions. You can kind of get a sense for one side's witnesses. Like when they're prepped, there's kind of like a dance, a back and forth with questions. And I got the sense that she had very much been prepped by the Commonwealth, and that seemed like another misrepresentation, um, which I guess you could kind of see how they might want that, they might want to create that perception because, she's not a really good looking witness for the state. She looks like she recanted her testimony because she was approached by, a higher up and basically told to, it's like a conspiracy of silence. And so I don't know.
Olivia, how about this? Yeah, to that point, how about this? I'm giving her slight benefit of the doubt that she wouldn't outright lie about that. But what if whatever the Commonwealth was concerned about in her testimony was relayed to her through the commissioner, because they had a one-on-one meeting, right? So she would truly be able to say, no, I haven't had any discussions with the DA, the Commonwealth, the prosecution. But, oh, by the way, I'm having a one-on-one meeting with the commissioner who wants me to do the right thing.
Yeah, and here's the test. Here's the questions for the test.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Here it is. I've written a note on this paper.
The cheat sheet.
Yes. So I think that to me seems reasonable. And remember, she didn't testify in trial number 1, and she was called by the defense in trial number 2. So it was a weird situation all the way around, and she just made it weirder by being.
It would have been great if we had gotten some more color on like the exact timeline of when she recanted her testimony and like when she went to the feds, and like I would have loved to have known those exact dates and when everything happened. And also, like, what was she given? That because she said she was given factual information, a timeline that proves that it was a false memory. Like, what exactly, like, who gave her that?
Yeah.
And what exactly was she given? There's so much that I'm like, I want to know about what happened there.
And that statement was so weirdly worded, that I've been made aware of some factual statements that lead me to believe that what I said before did not happen.
So contrived.
What?
Yeah, she left the impression, I thought with me, that somehow her timesheet showed that she had left the office at 3:00 after she had been called in to sub, and therefore she couldn't have seen the 5:00 incident. But that doesn't mean that she left the premises and wasn't watching, even if the timesheets show that she left at 3.
Right. I mean,
it wasn't paid. Wasn't paid.
It doesn't mean that she couldn't have viewed that footage after the fact, because she said that she testified that she did see the footage, like she saw footage of it, or she remembered seeing footage of it. I mean, you can always watch that at any point, after the fact. And also, who is she approached by with that information if not the Commonwealth? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
And
if they had no communications, then who came to her with that info and why?
This was after she met with the FBI in August of 23. So there was that gap. And the statement that was made was so specific and so unique that it just rings hollow to say, well, that was some false memory created by what the defense wanted me to say at the time. It's preposterous. Okay.
Right.
And she was doing this to like try and save her career, it seemed, like you
Bye-bye career.
but meanwhile, the irony is that she, in my opinion, destroyed her career. I mean, what attorney is going to put her on the witness stand in any case in the future? Because all you do is you cross-examine her and say, well, are you sure that's not a false memory? I mean, how can we trust your memory, right?
How can she even be a cop? Because they got to write
Right.
reports. They got to interview people. How can you believe anything she ever writes down again?
Yeah, as a
So-
matter of fact,
Exactly.
one of the jurors didn't one of the jurors say, I think it was Paula in her interview with Jess Machado said that she's running around Boston carrying a gun. You
Yeah.
know, like
Well, I
whoa.
know. Yeah, I mean,
So
it's
we'll
just
see for how
crazy.
much longer. One of two things is going to happen. The dust is going to settle, and they're going to sweep her under a carpet somewhere because she is a Boston cop now, so she's not front and center in the trilogy of terror, Canton, Dedham, Dedham. So that could happen, or she could just be bounced after a period of time. It
Right.
looks like it's less connected to what happened at the trial.
Okay,
Yeah,
speaking
I
I
of
don't think she's helped her future, no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Yes.
agree. And I've heard from Boston cops that that she's kind of the laughing stock now. I mean,
I
she's
can't imagine that. Yeah,
really,
she was-
the laughing stock.
she-
Well, as I said, Mike Easter said she was the number one of how you don't testify. Speaking of which, thank you, CHRM,
Baby
for the donation. Your baby AI has just been posted. Shall we watch it? Because
Oh,
I don't know.
Mikey,
Does Missy have
really
it handy?
want- I
I don't
really-
know.
Missy
I
has it.
love
I want. We're so excited that we made the hit list, but I really want Mike Easter to like do every single
he-
testimony in the future and do it as a baby AI. So that's
I
what this
sent it
conversation's
to
about.
Mike, and he said his wife and his kids were just cracking up. They loved it.
it's amazing. I saw the short clip on Twitter earlier. I loved it.
Yeah. Can we play it, Missy? Let's play it. And then Mike Easter could be the baby AI who does the reaction after he does it on our show.
My daughters are cringing that I watch those baby things. They're like, it's so silly, but I'm like, it's so funny. I don't know why.
It really is. It is fun to watch and creative. I love it. Yeah.
That'd be funny if you're in a baby photo. I would love that. I love the baby AI. You'd be so great. You'd be so great. So great.
And hopefully there's some value to your audience. And if there's something you think I would bring value to in the future, whether it's me or baby me, let me know.
Okay. You know we will. Thanks, Michael.
And then Mike Easter could.
Ah.
There you go. There you go. So,
Those are amazing. I love those.
Yeah.
they're so great. And we thank her allegedly for posting it. She was in our chat last night. So we were talking about, wouldn't it be great to have Mike Easter be the baby AI commenting on everything because he was so great. And there he is. Now
There
he
he
is.
was.
There he is.
Ask and you
Yeah,
shall
whoever does
receive.
those does it so quickly. Sometimes
I
they'll
know.
like finish it before the person's live stream is over.
That's so great.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
great.
It's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Okay,
so,
we're gonna move on now
yeah.
to number 5. Let's get to number 5. This is one of the experts in the mix. Let's see. Let me make sure I pull this up properly. Well, my skills are being challenged dramatically here. This is probably, I don't know. There are 2 witnesses, 2 experts that really, I think made the difference. This guy is certainly one of them.
Positively or negatively?
Positively, yes, positive.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point because there were plenty of prosecution experts that did the contrary. So this is a positive. Dr.
Yes.
Dr.
Wolf.
Rentschler.
How
Mr.
long
Rentschler, quick.
table eating your ham sandwich with the folks there enjoying the event? How long do you think that went on for?
I honestly don't know. 10 minutes. How long does it take you to eat a ham sandwich? 10 minutes?
He should have said Hoss long.
And after you finished your ham sandwich and then you told us you stood in the corner, you got a ride back to the airport?
I did. Yes, sir.
I mean, it's just so ludicrous, this whole line of questioning that what did Brennan think, I got got something here with the ham sandwich. You're not going to get away with that whole ham sandwich story.
That's so great. Hi, you should have
Oh
said
my
hot
God.
sauce.
That would have been good. How long did it take you to eat that ham sandwich?
I mean, that would have been epic. Can you even imagine if he had?
That would have been the best
so
Freudian
funny.
slip ever. So
Oh my gosh.
obviously, this guy was an amazing witness, and when you're attacking ham sandwiches that you're desperate, right? Because his testimony
Yeah,
is
really
killing you.
scraping the barrel there.
Yeah. So on a more serious note from Dr. Rentschler, what was the key for you that may have helped this jury come to their decision?
Well, you know what I thought was just amazing, both with Dr. Rentschler and Dr. La Posada, was, it's like Hank Brennan is his own worst enemy. I mean, he did just as much damage to his own case as the defense did, and with the questions that he asked. And I just loved seeing those back-to-back witnesses, both of them, being asked about, well, did you consider this, or did you look at this when coming to your conclusions? And both of them were like, well, he wasn't hit by a car, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you may, if you found some broken taillight at the scene, it doesn't matter because he wasn't hit by a car. And
Yeah.
I just loved those moments. And I felt like Dr. Rentschler came back from lunch just breathing fire, because he was,
Had another ham sandwich. Oh,
exactly.
yeah. So, and I think that theme, which we heard through all the defense experts, was very simple, very clean, very easy to understand. He wasn't hit. So, you can throw all of the smoke and mirrors at me. Did you consider that they found? I don't care. He wasn't hit. So it's such an easy concept to follow.
And imagine eliciting that testimony of the opposing counsel's witness. Like, that was elicited because of Hank Brennan, not even because of the defense. So talk about an own goal.
You're right.
Aidan Carney said the other night when we asked him on the Lollapalooza, which I know you're watching because you kept getting knocked out of it. I apologize, but this is even better because we get you one-on-one, and that was even better. He said, because I asked him, I said, why would Hank Brennan take this? I mean, he had Whitey Bulger, and he still considered a great defense attorney, because it was assigned and and all. But why would he take this? And he said that he wants to be the DA in a different county. He wanted to be the DA. He wanted to get elected.
Oh,
goodbye
goodness.
for that.
That was not a good advertisement.
No, I can see some opposition commercials coming out of some of his work. Yeah. So,
yeah, my goodness.
This guy laid out so many of the issues that we saw with Welcher that we were, crossing our fingers, hoping that Welcher would make a revisit, but that was not to be. No rebuttal witnesses, because where were they going to go with Welcher? There was nothing positive that he could do for the prosecution. So, partly because this guy set him up.
Right. Which is interesting because in one of their court filings, and actually probably more than one, but I know at least one for certain that was filed after the trial had started, Hank Brennan wrote, that Dr. Welcher was currently at that time conducting new testing in response to the ARCA discovery. And so it's like, was that was he actually, or did he conduct new testing and it just didn't go so favorably or so
maybe
well?
he used some red paint, did a whole new set of experiments, the red paint experiments.
Well, I think
much more complex.
How about this? He conducted his experiments by assuming there was no X-ray of John O'Keefe's arm. Holy moly!
Oh my gosh!
But remember pre-trial how much there, and even into the trial, how much fighting there was over Welcher doing additional work and getting those opinions in. And if those opinions come in, then Rentschler and/or Wolf should be able to talk about them. All of that out the window when they decided not to bring Welcher back in.
And I think I genuinely think that it was not necessarily because that was the plan all along, but I think because Hank Brennan kind of got caught with his pants down, and if he had brought those witnesses back, that could have been serious ethical issues for him down the road.
Interesting. That's a really Olivia, that's a really interesting point. We've glossed over that. That's a very interesting point. You're absolutely right in regard to that.
We highlight at least one of those in our little countdown here, but he had enough problems already. So yeah.
By the way, countdown.
To compound them.
Countdown to Michael. My husband is appearing again on the show, even though he's not on the show. Brady stars as Linda. Tell your dear husband, Linda Jacques, Buffalo, New York. My Lynn served Lynn served
Wow.
14 years. Dr. Baden identified correct murder with DNA.
Man.
There you go. There you go. That's
Incredible.
what justice is about. So, when we're talking about this show, since we're talking about making sure we don't convict innocent people, we should also be talking about when I know there's been a number of people on the show that have in comments that have followed on the basis that, we've been responsible for freeing the innocent, something that we feel very strongly about, obviously. And some people think, well, the system works after you put people away for 40 years wrongly. Yeah, but
Oh,
why should we
Better
why
to
should-
let a guilty person go than et cetera, innocent
Right.
person. Okay, so to your point that you were just making there, Olivia, about own goals, this next one, let me hit a couple of buttons here and see what happens. This next one, I think I would also consider to be an own goal. So let me get this one up here for you. This is another expert witness. This is more, less, I should say it's a less dramatic moment, but substantively it was huge because this particular witness was able to pontificate really on something that she had no right to, ability to, and she did it when questioned by Hank Brennan. And so that's what made this so different. And you know who I'm talking about then. I've been giving you enough hints there. Marie Russell. You see if I can make sure I get this one right. There's a little nugget toward this was the very end of her testimony. And Brennan had the nerve to ask, well, did you consider some of the statements made by the defendant? And oh yeah, well, that's when this little ditty
that was a
played out.
huge moment.
Yeah, here we go.
Have you listened to the statements of the defendant herself in this case regarding potential impact?
No, what do you mean?
Well, have you seen any statements made by the defendant to any media about potential impact or collision in this case?
Oh, are you referring to what you've asked me previously about? Did I hit him or something of that? I don't. What do you mean specifically?
Have you seen any of the media statements by the defendant? 2020 Nightline docuseries. Have you seen any of these statements in your analysis of whether or not there was a impact or collision between the defendant and her Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe? Have you seen any of those?
I did see some statements, but that was after I rendered my opinion.
And some of those statements, after you rendered your opinion, did some of those statements come from the defendant herself?
Yes.
And when you listen to those statements, did you hear any of them talk about the idea or issue of collision or impact?
Yes.
And when you listen to those statements after you formed your opinions, did in any way change the analysis of your opinion?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why.
Please do.
Oh, please don't.
Please do.
The defendant had undergone a very stressful event, finding her loved one in the snow. And so after a stressful event, many people suffer from what's called an acute grief reaction. It's very common. And they do things that seem to be irrational. They ramble. They act bizarrely. They make statements that are irrational, that don't make sense, and they oftentimes tend to blame themselves for whatever has happened. I've seen this many, many, many times in the emergency department.
So, what was that question you asked again? Oh man, that is brutal.
Oh my God.
Yes,
Please do.
Please do.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, Olivia, I've forgotten about that. I
Oh,
remember
he
the grief
regretted
counseling.
that right after.
Oh my goodness, but I forgot the please do. He tried to set her up, and she set him up.
And that was the very end of her testimony.
Oh, it was
There was some
incredible.
cleanup on redirect, but this was the crux of the cross. Yep.
And when the state's majority evidence too, are her statements, Karen Reed's statements, relying upon those statements. I just thought that was so powerful because it just disarmed the any power or weight you might give to those statements.
Yeah, and it was common sense, I thought. We talked about it all throughout pre-trial, motions, and then the trial, even the first trial. wouldn't that be a common reaction to that unknown? Did I hit him? Did I hit him? Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? It just seemed natural to me. I know that folks on
Well,
the other
also,
side of the argument think that that's all just somehow made up, or that it's a true admission. She knew she hit him, but she wanted to phrase it like that
right, a
because it sounds
confession.
more innocent. Yeah.
Olivia, let me ask you this, because
Yeah, I mean,
the day that, and it has to do with this, there was one day that Hank Brennan read all the different texts, that she was having with John O'Keefe, but then he also played the clip that where she said that, yeah, Jennifer McCabe told me he hadn't come into the house, so that's why I said that. Could I have hit him? Did I have hit him? Do you think the jury got that then? Because that just popped out of me on that day for some reason, and I hadn't thought about that before that.
it's an interesting question. I don't know. It definitely probably wasn't that significant in the grand scheme of things to the jury, so I don't know how much it would have stood out to them. But for me personally, as someone who's been following this case for a long time, I've always wondered and thought, what was Jen McCabe asking Karen Reed or telling her before they got to the scene and found John O'Keefe? I mean, was she like, was this a response to something Jen McCabe was asking her at the scene? Like, we're only hearing one part of the equation, and maybe Jen McCabe was asking her, you said your taillight's broken, honey. Like, do you think you could have hit him or something like that? And as we heard, it was reported at least that Karina Kolakitas was supposed to testify about how Jen McCabe apparently came to her early on and told her that they had like ring footage of Karen hitting John.
Right. Just
And
a flat ass lie, and that was kept from the
right.
jury.
I mean, it's like an insulting lie almost because of how much footage in this case went missing. But if anything, they'd have the opposite of footage of the crime. So, but it's interesting because I had actually, when I first started following this case, I always wondered about those statements in the morning and what kind of situation could have elicited those statements from somebody who's innocent. And I had initially wondered, was Jen McCabe telling Karen Reed, well, John never came in the house and we have ring cameras there. Maybe you hit him. Maybe that's why your taillight's broken. Like, maybe she was putting it in her head that there was footage of Karen hitting John, because I was trying to think what could be something that could convince somebody that they did something, where it otherwise may seem unreasonable. Well, if you have someone on footage doing something, it's kind of hard to deny. And why would you think someone would lie to you about that? And so then when I heard the whole Karina Kolakitas thing, a few months or a couple months back, now I'm like, oh my goodness, maybe I was onto something with that. But yeah, that's what actually made me go digging, like way back when, maybe 2 years ago, into all of the news that was published right after the arrest. And that's where I found how someone from the DA's office told the news that they had ring camera footage of Karen hitting John.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and
That
then if you think
makes a
about,
lot of sense then.
I'm not a shrink, but if you think about somebody in that state of mind, how much power of suggestion does it really take, to trigger her concern?
Right.
Maybe I did. She's hyper focused on what happened, and then this little nugget has been planted that did you run into him? Yeah, I think
And the
there's
police, I mean, and Karen was so erratic and traumatized and what were the words they were using? Hysterical at the scene, so much so that it required them to apparently involuntarily section her, in a psychiatric hold at the hospital.
Right.
So why are we putting so much weight into other statements that this person was making at the scene, when all the police in their reports wrote, that she was not making sense and being hysterical? But we're gonna cherry pick this one thing, if that one thing was even said. I mean, it's
Olivia, what do you think of this? I
Ridiculous.
think it hurt the prosecution, but what do you think to all of a sudden have this enhanced version of what was said? Not could I have hit him? Did I hit him? It was now I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. Even
I hit him. One of them had a
one of the
fourth.
EMTs said threw in a fourth that had never been thrown in before. Of course, not documented anywhere. Do you think that the thought process with the prosecution was this kind of bolstering will be believable?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that, well, it's interesting when you look at the timeline of events of how the statements evolved. And, it seems to largely kind of come from Jen McCabe and the evolution of the statement where it suddenly changed from a question to a statement was around the time that all this incriminating evidence was found by the defense inculpating Jen McCabe and exculpating Karen Reed. So, the timing is curious, certainly, and the inconsistency throughout all of the, the different claims about the statements is also curious. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking, to be honest. There's a lot of things in this case that I'm like, what were they thinking bringing this, to trial and presenting this in evidence? But
I mean, you almost have to think that these folks independent, these EMTs, those with the refreshed recollections that are so much better than the contemporaneous recollections,
right.
did they on their own just say, this will help my boss? I don't know what the whole thought process is because it's so unbelievable.
Yeah, it's inconceivable, like especially with Nuttall, right? Because he was kind of like their star witness, I guess, this trial. But yeah, I mean, I don't get the thought process because it's like you instantly lose that credibility when you're impeached by the fact that this is not what you said before. And I don't get it.
I've drank a lot of the water when I was in Dedham. I don't think my memory is any better now than it was back then.
Oh,
but all of these
wait.
witnesses, it has improved since the first time they talked about these events.
It's got to be the Canton water.
Yeah, except for Hank Brennan, who was asked all the older people,
do
you have a problem with
you got a memory problem?
Oh my God.
The doctor,
Then there's Dr. Russell. She
I
gasped.
love her gasp. Oh my God. She's
speaking of her,
fantastic.
before we move on here, they're talking about the movie now because Aiden, he's got a movie thing going on as well. But we now know that Karen Reed and Alan Jackson have a deal, some package deal for a film. So people start talking about who's going to play whom. Who have you heard talk about playing Dr. Russell? Anybody have any names to throw out? I'll tell you what I've heard.
Oh,
Kathy Bates.
Question.
Oh, how perfect is
Oh,
that?
I think that's
You know
pretty
what?
good. Yeah.
I think I may have heard that before. Yeah, that could be good. I mean, there's so many characters in this too, developing a cast that would actually be really fun.
That's really good. By the way, before we get to our next clip, Audrey Presley wants to know, does anyone know what Maureen Hartnett wanted to correct in her testimony?
I don't know. She's the one who took the swatches out of the sweatshirt and did
Right,
those
and then
tests.
Hank had her on the list for rebuttal.
Correct.
For rebuttal, and along with Welcher, and obviously, so we don't know. We can't help you. I'm sorry about that. All right, do we have another head?
Yes, let's have another. Okay.
I love Olivia's insight into it too.
Let me cue this one up. And I could say another favorite witness, but that it's kind of goes without saying. That's why they're making the hit list. Okay, hold on here. This guy was on the stand for quite some time, but there were some moments that are hard to forget. Okay, Sergeant.
Oh boy.
But I'm not going to argue about semantics here.
Well, you'll agree that words matter, right? I mean, you're testifying, so words do matter.
Words do matter. That's important.
So working off of your, as you put it, your theory, you theorized that there was an impact spot at 34 Ferry, correct?
Based on the statement I hit him, I assumed that Mr. O'Keefe was impacted with something. Initial hours of the investigation, we had those statements, I hit him. We had the statements that, oh my God, did I hit him? So utilizing that information with the evidence at that point that we had was a broken cocktail glass. So a theory would be, why is the cocktail glass broken? Because it came into contact with the victim. So that's why my information communicated to the ME's office was a possible domestic involving a glass strike to the victim. As a result, we had to go and see the victim's body and the injuries. So Mr. O'Keefe's injuries presented a certain way, and we learned more information. So the more information that comes in, the more information that we are able to corroborate statements and collect evidence that further corroborates other information is helpful in the investigation. That's how investigations develop. If we knew everything we knew from day one, there wouldn't be a process of developing investigation.
So the answer to my question, Sergeant, is you were working off of a theory, correct? Yes or no?
We were working off a report of an injured male party, and then we developed the information, collected the evidence, and developed the investigation.
Do you know what the word theory means?
I'm sorry, English is like a third language for me. So if you can bring up the Webster's Dictionary, I can read it out.
You want me to pull up the Webster's Dictionary? You want to take a break real quick and pull up the Webster's Dictionary to define a word that you used in an answer about 40 seconds ago? We're working off of a theory, quote unquote. You said it, not me. You want me to go get a dictionary so we can figure out for the jurors what that word means?
Objection.
All right, sustain. Let's move.
Okay, so it's it's his third language. I think his fourth, which he is fluent in, is assholery, because he's definitely got that down to a science. What a jerk! I mean, again, Olivia, I start thinking, what's going through this guy's mind? Does he think this makes him look good to the jury? That it makes him look believable? That it helps him? It helps the Commonwealth?
So I'm so glad that you played this clip, because I actually looked up the word theory in Ukrainian and Russian.
Of course you did.
You know what? It sounds like almost exactly the same in both of those languages as it does in English, and it's spelled nearly the same. So
That's so funny. I mean, it's just so absurd when he's used the word twice in the last 45 seconds, and now all of a sudden, because he wants to be a smartass, I don't know. I know 3 languages. That's not, I mean,
he just wants to be difficult and
of course
can't give a direct answer. But you know what else is interesting about that? Everything that he just testified in that little clip is that at 10:41 a.m. on January 29th, 2022, Yuri called the office of the chief medical examiner to report that they were investigating the case now as a domestic assault. And so it's interesting how he is so firm and confident, in his testimony. He's about there being a car impact, a car collision. But yet his actions on the day of the investigation dictate otherwise. They were calling and reporting that they were investigating as suspicious, and they believed it was a domestic assault with a cocktail glass. And that's obviously very different than a vehicle pedestrian strike. So
wow,
looks like they weren't that confident.
Hey, can you pronounce theory in Russian? Can you do that?
I think it's like theoria or like something like that. Yeah. I had Google pronounce it for me.
Okay.
I love it. Right. I never thought about that, Olivia. That is so great. That is really fabulous. We're gonna, of course, everyone here now. Everyone go do that right now, because we're gonna all, obviously when we get off the air, we're gonna do that. By the way, while you're doing that, Kay Schmidt gifted 5 Justice Serve TV.
Thank you, Kay Schmidt.
Thank you, Kay, for people. We always say that because people want to get these. It's expensive for people. You pay $2.99. It's expensive for a lot of people to do this monthly, and the graciousness of our viewers who do that for people. And we've seen people in the chat say, look, I'd like to get one. I really want to be a member. And so we thank you all, and just so gracious for everybody. Just wonderful. And of course, guests like Olivia make this like what it is, because I've been following her before she even knew who we were. We were like, I got to follow Olivia.
I stole her stuff. I stole her stuff right out. I gave her credit, but I stole it. She had some great
that's the
graphics.
point, though. Get the word out.
Yeah, that was back in the initial inverted video days.
Oh,
you
yeah, I
you did a
remember
great
that.
job kind of highlighting things like remember what happened was, first of all, in trial 1 they were outed as having the inverted video. That was, oh my gosh, we didn't even realize. Then they changed the story to say, well, it's always been inverted, and they provided some video from post and prior, and the graphics were different colors, right? And
Yeah, exactly. They had changed the time. The whole timestamp it was changed.
Yeah, so you created a
And the
nice
placement of
graphic
it.
to point that out. So that was my first theft of Olivia's work.
Yeah, Olivia's was fun. And then Misty says, I love Olivia's fun fact. They're just amazing fact. They're not just fun, they're just amazing because she's got such a handle on this. But Yuri, who's been on the presidential details, right? The president of the United States, he doesn't know what theory is. And he was one of Mike Easter's. He was one of the teaching moments with Mike Easter. Dever was one.
Yes.
He was 2, and I think everyone's favorite witness to hate, Jen McCabe, was also.
Oh, wait. Funny you should mention her
I
name.
knew that.
Number 2. We're up to number 2. This was going to be controversial because in most people's lists, or a lot of them, she would be number 1. But I took a little bit of a left turn on number 1. So let's go to number 2. This is Jen McCabe. And, she was on the stand for, 2 full days? Does that sound right?
At least.
Maybe it was 2.5. Anyway, this is cross-examination. Let me make sure I've got this queued up to the right spot. She's a doozy. Double check here. Hold on. Stand by. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. All right. So again, coming in at number 2, and she was really one of the first, substantive witnesses. Carrie was on before her, but obviously didn't have the level of information that the master manipulator had, right? So Jen McCabe, this is right in the middle of her cross-examination, I believe. Here we go.
Clinging to life. You weren't doing chest compressions at 6:07 and 6:08, were you?
I was walking over when I was calling.
You were calling your sister on the phone, weren't you, Mr. K?
I was calling them to see if they would come out, but I was going right over to work on him.
And you could have walked 25 feet to the front door, walked in the house, and screamed for Bryant to come out and help you in those precious seconds and minutes, couldn't you?
That would have taken me away from helping John, getting Kerry blankets, giving him compressions.
And making those 2 very important phone calls at 6:07 and 6:08 that you say were not answered. Correct?
They were not important phone calls. I tried to call my sister, and then I focused on John.
They were not important phone calls, but they were important enough for you to make while John is clinging to life right there in front of you, right?
As I was walking over, I called to see if she would answer.
And she didn't answer. Let's talk about that. She didn't answer according to you.
So if we're going to talk about it, we're beyond the luncheon break.
Lunch, everybody.
I'll wrap it.
Okay.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure.
She didn't answer the phone, did she?
No, she didn't.
So you have a situation where a man is laying dead or dying in the front yard of your sister's house. You see nothing in terms of life inside the house. Lights aren't coming on. They're not getting up. They're certainly not coming outside, right?
They were sound asleep.
They weren't coming outside, were they?
Because they were asleep.
You didn't know if they were asleep. All you knew was there was a severely injured man on the front lawn of their house, and your sister didn't answer the phone, not once, but twice, correct?
Correct. She didn't answer the phone.
Did you think your sister might have been in peril? Did you think to go inside the house and check that they're okay?
I had no reason to think that they weren't okay.
You had no reason to believe they weren't okay. A man was dead or dying on their lawn, and your sister's not answering the phone. And nobody is coming out to the chaos of Karen Reed screaming on the front lawn. You didn't think there was some reason to believe they could have been in peril?
I didn't, because your client was screaming she hit him. She had a cracked taillight. She was crying she hit him. I didn't, but my focus... Can I finish, please?
You had solved the crime right then and there. You solved the whole case.
No, I didn't. I knew John never came in the house, so I had no concern for anyone's safety inside the house.
The reason you didn't go inside the house is because you knew better. You knew better. You knew she wasn't in peril. You knew that Brian Albert wasn't in peril. You weren't worried at all about them, were you?
I was not worried at all because something happened on the front lawn that had nothing to do with anything inside that house.
You weren't worried about them at all because you knew what really happened, didn't you?
At that moment, I didn't know that he was hit by a vehicle and there was taillight found next to him.
All right, Jerry.
Yeah.
Now we go get lunch. Let's go
my
have lunch.
Yeah, and now and you know, so Jackson is like, two more questions, be done with this. You know, he's forced into this box by the judge, and he did an amazing job. And you know, you can hear even at the end, Olivia, what do you make of this? She's cramming as many bad facts into these last couple of answers as she possibly can. Carrie said, "I did it," and there were taillight pieces found on the lawn. I mean, you know, she's combining all of this series of events that played out over a long time to somehow justify not knocking on the door of her sister-in-law's house, who has the first responder husband, because she's so concerned about John O'Keefe.
I mean, it sounds like textbook consciousness of guilt, you know, and like, look over here, not at me. Kind of like claiming that somebody else asked you to Google the incriminating thing. But yeah, I mean, no taillight was found. Like, you didn't see any taillight there next to his body when you were apparently trying to help save him, which was also a new fact at this trial.
Yeah. And that would have been
you know,
interesting if Alan had focused on that, but I blame Judge Kenney for that, for you know, leaning on him to get done. Lunch is here, because that would have been a perfect follow-up. Well, what do you mean the taillight pieces were found there? Don't you know they weren't found until this day, this day, this day, and this day? How did you know that night that there were taillight pieces found around his body, if they ever were? How did you know that? And how did that affect your decision not to go knock on the door of your sister-in-law's?
It's a really good point you make, because the question she's being asked is like, why she wasn't worried about her sister in the house. And it's at that time period, the taillight pieces weren't, no pieces were found in the morning. The first time any of them were found was at 5:45 or sometime thereafter. So it's like, how would that even factor into any of your decision making at that time in the morning? And of course, there's the iconic moment from Alan Jackson, and your sister's not answering the phone.
Yes,
I just love it. I mean, I have this trial like memorized in little sound bits like that. But the other thing that I thought was very interesting about that whole time period in the morning is, I mean, first of all, it's just crazy how Jen diverted them to go back to the house that Karen had just left, that John wasn't at, which is why Karen left the house. And it strains credulity to me that the reason for that was, you know, oh, well, you know, we just wanted to double check or whatever, because you could have called the daughter who was at the house, who had, you know, Karen originally called via her phone because she had Jen McCabe's phone number that morning. She was still at the house. You could have called her. And why would your priority be to go to the one place that's safe and indoors and warm if there's a possibility that someone's outside during this blistering cold snowstorm? But more importantly, why wasn't Jen nonstop calling Nicole, Brian, their house phone number when they're on the way to 34 Fairview? Like, think about it. If you're going to go drive over to someone's house that is your sister's house, when you're urgently looking for somebody, wouldn't you be calling them on the phone, like trying to get them to answer the phone, you know, see if they'll pick up, because it would be a lot more efficient. Like, hey, do you have any idea where John is? We can't find John anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And
at that point, it's just, can you help? We're trying to find out where he is. After the fact, once they get there, it's, can you help? We found him.
Right. And it's, she can't even say that she wasn't cognizant, like that she could be doing that, because she called Nicole at 5:07 a.m. and had a 38-second conversation with her that was never disclosed before. And then there's two other calls at 6:07 and 6:08 a.m. to Nicole Albert. So clearly she realizes that like she can communicate with someone by making phone calls. You would think that she would be nonstop trying to reach them or get someone to pick up the phone if they're driving over to 34 Fairview. Kind of like how Karen was nonstop calling John, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Alan just encapsulated the whole thing. When we replayed this clip and posted it as one of our day's events, I just put the caption on there, "She knew," because that's what he said, and that's what read with the jury. That's why you didn't go in the house. You knew exactly what happened to this guy on the front lawn. You didn't need to go in the house. You didn't need to wake up or bother anybody there because you all knew what happened. It was
How would you know? How would you know that they were fine in the house?
Of course.
If you already had, it's guilty knowledge. And that's why she wasn't calling them on the way to 34 Fairview. And conversely, that's why Karen was nonstop calling John, because she didn't know if John was okay. She didn't know where he was.
Yeah.
She was trying to find John. So
by the way, I just want to mention, at this point, by the way, I just want to mention something. You probably all learned, all of you watching, that we don't take trolls lightly here. If you haven't heard my rant of yesterday, and somebody just who doesn't even have their own face in there wanted to post to Olivia that on camera with a laughing emoji, and I said, "Who the F cares?" And now I would have said, "Who the fuck cares?" But
you're more polite than that.
But I'm more polite than that. Okay, so I'm just telling you, and I'm warning you all. Fine, you want to troll us? We will not take it lightly, because we're not subject. We don't care. Okay, be our guest. Troll away, because we will respond away. You do not scare us. All right. And I will remind everybody what my job is. My job is to sit next to people who are accused of killing people by shooting them in the head, which I do so in trials. All right. So really, do you think you scare me by trolling on is Olivia going to be on camera? No, you don't. And if you haven't learned your lesson by yesterday's rant, maybe you never will. Okay, I've got that out of my system.
All right.
Thank you, Christine F, aka K-Fan, new member. Thank you very much.
So now is the time. Can we have a drum roll? This is good. This is an interesting first choice. So stick with me on this. I was looking at not just, again, dramatic moments, but also moments that were very important to the trial. Doesn't necessarily mean it was heard in front of the jury, but very important nonetheless. So
Will is on to watch this. Will DeGlara came on to watch this moment.
Did he?
Yeah, there he is. Here he is, right here.
Now.
AJ is totally my GF.
Now. Okay, so now I have to find it, because I actually put it in a different place.
I was giving you time by mentioning.
Oh, is that what that was? Was that? No, that's not it. I didn't put it there. Hold on. I'm going to get it. I know it's here somewhere. So, we're getting there. Hold on. The drama. It's a cliffhanger.
Suspense.
It is. I think we got it. I think we got it. Hold on here.
And now what we have is we have holes in the back of the sweatshirt that were dramatically held up and confronted with Dr. Wolf, and then the jury sees it. With the clear, unmistakable, purposeful intention of having the jury conclude that these holes could have come from events on January 29th of 2022, when in fact the Commonwealth well knows from its own documents, from its own criminal list, that those holes in the back were caused by their criminalist as part of their examination and sampling of the hoodie. What could be more egregious? What could be more misleading than that? And what could be more important for a context than the alleged collision that never occurred? That's the topic before some of the most significant and probative witnesses in this trial that the Commonwealth has been attacking from the jump.
My brief review of the lab paperwork and looking at the hoodie, it appears that I made a mistake.
So that on our unofficial list was a moment that may have brought down the House. It really might have in terms of how it affected Brennan, and it killed, I think, the rebuttal case. So thoughts, Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, between that and then I think also the X-rays, you had these two significant moments where it's kind of like the inverted Sally Port video in
Yeah,
the first trial.
you're right.
The prosecution like deliberately trying to mislead the jury, or it's like fraudulent, presenting fraudulent evidence. And I mean, look, I don't think that was a mistake by Hank Brennan, because he had 2 full days where he got to voir dire Dr. Marie Russell for a Daubert Lanigan hearing, and they went into great detail about the damage to the clothing during the 2 days of that voir dire, and not once were the holes, on the back of the sweatshirt, not once were they discussed, in relation to damage that was allegedly caused that night.
For good
And
reason.
so
Yeah.
I think right, because he knew that they were taken for sampling by the lab criminalists. So it's strains credulity that was a mistake. I think it was just that he got caught, and what a desperate move too. I mean, because that's kind of significant, something that you would, if you're going to do something that bold, like, you wouldn't do it on something that I think is so obvious, at least to the other side, right?
Yeah.
So
And
how
I'm
about
not
the
so
X-ray?
sure.
How about the X-ray, the
The
arm
X-
appearing? And the judge said, "You got to bring those X-rays of the arm that are the size of Rhode Island."
Yeah,
Yeah.
we want a little teeny one. Remember, the context of this was an motion for mistrial with prejudice, which of course was denied, and it led to a jury, instruction that
Right.
that basically outed the prosecution as fudging about
Except did it really
showing that
though?
sweatshirt.
It really
It
did.
wasn't.
No.
It should have been far more stern. There should have been some language suggesting it was inappropriate, not just it happened. And as my esteemed colleague LKB has said many times, you had Lally and McLaughlin sitting there
Right.
basically acquiescing to fraud on the court and the jury.
It's
So
unbelievable. I mean, Judge Beverly Cannoni holds every member of the defense team accountable for the actions of other members of the defense team, yet the standard, which is every member of the prosecution team is responsible for the actions, like, if one member withholds Brady evidence, that is an action of the prosecution team. You don't get to have plausible deniability because you didn't know about it. But yet she doesn't seem to uphold that same standard when it comes to the actions of the Commonwealth. And the fact that they just sat there completely silent and didn't say anything. I mean, was this planned? Was this coordinated? Was it, I mean, whose idea was this? Because I don't think it was because Brennan was just ignorant and it was a mistake. So I
they
mean,
had
he
put
had the
that.
exhibit there.
Yeah, they had to put the
Right.
sweatshirt right there. He knew it was going to be used. Even the judge, yeah, I saw it there. So I assumed
Right.
it had been talked about. No, wrong assumption. And so even if Lally and McLaughlin had no clue, the moment it happened, they had a duty to say something, and they did.
That's what that is what really threw me over the edge. And I've said that to you before. That really threw me over the edge. That was
Yes, I just stole that from you.
Yeah, well, I know. No, but no, I mean, there were a lot of things, but to me, that was just, I mean, this, you have somebody on trial for murder, and you have somebody, you have a crime that's not solved, right? That no one now is going to be charged. And make no mistake about it, you don't think Michael Morrissey is out there looking for the culprit? It ain't happening, right?
No, and Michael, because of his office, they've, I think, forever compromised the ability to get justice for Officer John O'Keefe, because of their actions and going full force ahead with Karen Reed. they've now created reasonable doubt for anybody who, you know, may get charged in the future. So yeah, it's really upsetting.
Where is Michael Morrissey these days? Anybody? Anyone?
Oh, well, let's transition to that because I can
Yeah,
tell you
the
where
Sandra
he is.
Birchmore
You want to talk about the Birchmore
Sandra
case before we
So
call it? Okay.
Yeah, just two quick things. Ham, Sammy, so Scandy, Britt Belmore, new member. Thank you very much for becoming a new member. And Diane Payne, thank you for the donation as a super sticker. We really appreciate it because Michael is going to go back to Dedham, Canton, Staunton on Monday, on July 7th. And every little bit helps with that. So yeah, where is he? Let's transition to that because he seems to have doubled down. And Olivia, before we go, and I promised Mizzy B that I would be doing something on Sandra Birchmore, not because it's because I'm upset about this, okay, having read about this case. And he seems to have doubled down on the fact that Sandra Birchmore may have framed herself for committing suicide. Okay? You've had a number of posts the past couple of days about it. Just talk to us about us before we leave tonight, because I think I would like to leave on the fact that that's a case that really no one has been arrested from the state, by the state AG, by Michael Morrissey's office. Only the federal government has arrested Farwell for the murder of a witness in an investigation dealing with the sex with Sandra Birchmore when she was 15 years old. So talk to us about your posts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just outrageous, especially hearing recently from Juna Perkins, who's running in the next DA race against Morrissey. If he's running again, I don't know. But that he said at that recent event in Quincy that he believed she committed suicide and was, like you said, doubling down on their medical examiner's findings. But here's the problem is I think that whole stance is problematic for a number of reasons. First of all, an investigation is not 100% comprised, and you know, a case and a prosecution against someone is not 100% comprised of a medical examiner's findings. I mean, there's so many other components to an investigation. Like, I don't know, the 30,000 plus text messages that your trooper Guarino just happened to, yeah, like, sorry, you didn't find those. The camera, the surveillance footage in the apartment building. I mean, this guy's going into her apartment and looks very shady. Not that that means you're guilty of anything, but is walking like someone who's trying to not be seen by the cameras, and happens to go in right before her last movements on her phone, an activity on her phone, and then leaves right after. I mean, there's so many different pieces of evidence, and they're detailed quite thoroughly in the federal indictment or federal arrest affidavit.
It's the arrest affidavit. It's the incarceration
Yep.
affidavit. I always tell people to look at that because that's the real detail. And one of these days we're going to spend a show. We're going to read that, as boring as it may seem, but so.
Oh, it's got some stuff in it.
It's got a
Yeah,
lot of stuff.
Yeah,
it's they. I mean, you know, they but also beyond that, there's two medical examiner or pathologists' opinions that contradict the state medical examiner, right? Because there's the federal medical examiner, but then there's also your husband in the civil. I believe it's in the civil case, right?
Right, in the civil case, right.
We're talking about people who are in the top of their game as far as medical expertise goes, who two of them have contradicting opinions. So I just think that is outrageous that he's doubling down on that. And I have posted about it a lot because he hadn't formally made that declaration before. But I was saying all along that that's the stance that his office was taking, because if it wasn't, then where are the state charges, right?
Right, exactly. And how about the AG too? I mean, she can come in too. It's really outrageous. So I wanted to do that, by the way, because you know, I think you and I are going to be talking a lot about this, and we are working on shows, as I said, with Mizzy B and also with Barbara, who is related to Sandra Birchmore, the last one to speak to her the night that after she just was never heard from again. So Ocean Beach wants to, by the way, to tell us $9.99. Thank you again for that. Linda, you're becoming a cult icon. I really? That's the first. Usually people hate me because I defend people, accused of murder. A cult icon, your rants. I don't know if you know what a hot button. I don't know. You push with your elegant takedown of disgrace. I don't know what that means. I mean, retired cough, young jerks with real FBI, Jodine Weber and Mark, obviously, Aiden's attorney. Okay, Betterow. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah, that was great.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that. I mean, I just felt very strongly that somebody going after Mike Easter needed to be, shall we say, not let to be, freely roaming with that. And by the way, I haven't heard any apology. No apology yet.
That person has moved. That person has moved on.
Yeah.
Moved on to
Yeah.
other pursuits.
Yeah,
Yes.
moved on with pursuits. And by the way, following the Brian Walsh hearing, Olivia, are we following the Brian Walsh hearing because of the players?
yes,
involved?
yeah, I've
Bukhenik
been
just
following
testified,
that.
right? Didn't Bukhenik testify?
Yes. Yeah.
That was actually a few weeks back, maybe more back, because I remember that was, I don't know if it was during the trial, but yeah, that was a few weeks back at least. And it's just interesting because so I had been, since following this case, trying to get as much information as I possibly could from the Brian Walsh investigation, because it's obviously the same investigators or a lot of overlap in the investigators, the same DA's office. And I just think the best way to, because people say, well, is it incompetence or corruption, right? And I firmly believe that it's, these people know what to do. I don't think it's necessarily incompetence. So looking at the Brian Walsh case, that becomes more and more clear. You get to compare their own work to their own work and see, oh, okay, well, you knew exactly how to do this in this other case.
In that case.
But there are certainly problems in the Brian Walsh case. I mean, problems with the phones. They had a consent agreement with Brian Walsh and his attorney, and they violated that consent agreement and went beyond the scope that was agreed to, that they could search. And then they used information from, it's fruit of the poisonous tree, right? So then they used the location data that they were not supposed to be accessing, and that led to a lot of searches where they found physical evidence. So I mean, they've got some real big problems in that case too, and those aren't even touching on the problems that are that exist because of the whole Karen Reed
case,
John O'Keefe
right.
situation. And there's many of those too. But yeah, I'm definitely following that one, and the Sandra Birchmore case. I mean,
So we're going to be with you for a while. That's what you're telling us.
We're going to be ringing you up.
we'll
Speaking of
be
the
around.
speaking of the Birchmore case from Teddy 617. Thank you so much. Sandra Birchmore case should make everyone angry. It needs more eyes. By the way, Birchmore O'Keefe combined to create a RICO problem for Morrissey. Interesting. RICO is raising its ugly head in so many different contexts these days. So that's an interesting take.
Wow,
Thank you, Teddy 617.
Thank you, Teddy. That's really interesting. So, Olivia, thank you so much. I'm so glad that, quite frankly, you got knocked off the Rita-palooza, the Frida-palooza, the Lollapalooza, because it gave us time. And I said that to you. It's better that we get to spend the whole time with you on the show because you have.
We had a Livapalooza, Livy-palooza.
Yeah, the Olivia Palooza. Yeah, and maybe next time, Michael, we'll go through. I have another 7 high points of things that are. I don't know how you whittle these down in this case.
I couldn't. But how could you go wrong? There were so many. I just ultimately decided on what I started with. Number one, it's what was the most consequential thing, even though it wasn't in front of the jury. And I think that's how I ended up where I was. So anybody could have their own list. There were so many. You could do it like a American Top 40. You could count them down like Casey Kasem.
Billboard Top 100.
Yeah, there you go.
100. And we'll be listening to what AJ has to say on Saturday night. So, Olivia, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both for having me. And thank you for all you guys have done. I mean, you guys have been such a wonderful asset to the community, the local community, and just everybody who's been watching the Karen Reed, John O'Keefe case and the other cases, the Sandra Birchmore, Brian Walsh. So thank you guys for all you've done. I know everybody appreciates so much the coverage you guys are providing, and I know I do. I love watching you guys, and happy to come on whenever you want me to.
Okay, now you've done it. Now you've done it, because we will. We're not shy. We will. Thank you so
All
much,
right, have a
Olivia.
great night.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thanks, you too.
All right,
Yeah.
Michael,
So
Bryant.
smart. I
No,
get
she's so
smarter
smart.
just being on when she's on. I just
I know,
pick up
she
a
knows
couple
this
IQ
case.
points.
She knows this case inside out, and she's fabulous. So, Michael Bryant, we are going to be on tomorrow, 12:50. We're going to be covering
Yes.
Diddy and who we think was going to something. Well, there's going to be something to report on, and of course, the Bryant Kohberger matter. If you subscribe, like, share, notify, you will get notice when we come on here tomorrow. Okay, so please do that. His hearing actually starts at 11 o'clock out in Idaho, 1 o'clock
Mountain
Eastern time.
Yeah. So we will see you then. In the meantime, I'm Michael Bryant. Try to do the right thing.
With Kenney, Baden, again, hit that share, like, subscribe, and notify button.